You're with Julian on the brown note and part of my very infrequent series on how to make friends and influence people. Do I still stand with J.K. Rowling? So years ago, I put online a piece saying why I stand with J.K. Rowling and back that up. Around the first time that her collision with the world of trans women was being made public, and she was copping stick for it. And I was basically saying that I put another piece online a few years ago, are biological women being erased? Now, biological women, or whatever term you want to use, cis women or whatever, or women, are the world's largest marginalised or oppressed group. Yet they're the only marginalised or oppressed group that has to farm out their rights through the filter of another group, which is trans women. So I put on how I supported the ethos behind J.K. Rowling supporting actual feminism. I am an actual feminist, and in that context, I don't include trans women's rights as part of feminism, because they're two separate things. I support trans women's rights as trans women's rights, but I'm not going to reduce the scope or context of feminism to accommodate another group. I wouldn't do that with any group. I've got a lot of problems with the way, like, anything that J.K. Rowling says, and a lot of it's crap, but anything that she says is held up to this incredible standard. But trans activists aren't, and I think trans activists are really, I'm not making an equivalence here because they're doing things in totally different ways, but I'm sure that most trans people want to live a quiet life and don't want to be dragged through the media every day. But trans activists can often be some of the worst involved in this process, even from the straight perspective. You know, I've said over and over, like, activism is a court of public opinion. It's making reasonable people agree that you deserve to be married if you're gay, or so on. So when you do things like, when you support things like drag queens reading children's books, it comes across as punitive, like you're jabbing your finger in the eye of anyone that doesn't believe you. And I did a piece on how modern activism is failing, because instead of trying to change the court of public opinion, which necessarily means people that don't agree with you yesterday but might tomorrow, it became about being punitive towards people that don't already agree with you. And that is not what activism is. So when you get stuff like the drag queens reading children's books, it's got nothing to do with being a trans woman at all. I mean, you can be a drag queen and not even be a gay man. You can just be a drag queen. It doesn't have any relationship towards gender identity in that same way. And I did mention about that play in Melbourne as kind of like the embodiment of it all, where there was this, in the middle of COVID, there was this play in Melbourne that was a trans play from a famous trans film. And the trans activists in Australia got very, very upset that the lead actor wasn't trans but was just a gay man, so they cancelled it after it had been through rehearsals, after it was going to air, and they didn't get any play. And I said what an impact that would have on people wanting to source trans material for future productions or producing them or funding them and so on, because it's too dangerous. What's going to happen to you? But probably the biggest thing this year kind of embodied both sides of my feelings about J.K. Rowling. The UK verdict, I totally support. So in the UK, there was a verdict in the court which said, okay, being a biological woman is a thing. And the most extreme crux of this was, it was almost illegal in the UK for, say, a woman's shelter not to accept a trans woman. So if you want to push it to an extreme, you could say a 50-year-old man that has transitioned into being a woman could have access to a facility where women are hiding from men. And it would have been illegal for them not to accept somebody. And that's a huge thing, as well as, female changing rooms and so on. So the British courts came back and said, no, you are allowed to have women-only spaces. That I completely support. I think most reasonable people support that. The sniping and gloating from JK about it, just was garbage. I wish he wouldn't do that stuff. And the other side of it is the Trump administration, because it's such an easy thing to kick trans women, are using it as a massive they use these things as distractions. What they really want to get through is tax cuts for billionaires. But if they go on about trans women in sport or something like that, they get loads of headlines on it, and it distracts the populace. And that's all it really is. How do I feel now? Look, I'm happy for a trans woman to be who she is, but, and this is a difficult statement to make because it could even be illegal to make it, but a trans woman is not a woman. And I say that in the context of a woman being a biological woman. To say that a trans woman is the same woman, I'm happy for a trans woman to be a different kind of woman, which they are, but to say they're the same woman is to denude the biological woman of so many aspects of her identity, such as being born in a woman's body, being treated by society as a woman throughout her whole life. All of those things are hugely important. The average age for a transition to being a trans woman is between 20 and 30, in their 20s and 30s. So are we erasing all of that life experience, going through how getting your period, being treated like a girl? All of those elements are incredibly important to what defines being a woman. And to say that a trans woman is the same woman is to denude a woman of any of those things being important. And I don't think that's on. I think that, a woman's history, self-definition, all those things are incredibly important. To say their bodies aren't important, we've just had in America a woman kept alive for well over a month who was dead. She was brain dead. But she was kept alive because I think it was Alabama, the state of Alabama has no abortion policy under any circumstances. So she was kept alive when she was clinically dead to give birth. And to give birth when you're not even conscious, through C-section to a 1 pound baby. Women's bodies have always been incredibly political. Nearly 50% of marriages globally are arranged. You spend your life as a woman, 50% of them, having sex with somebody you didn't even choose, having children with people that you didn't choose to have children with. And often being left with that family. Because in most cases, if that marriage doesn't work out, then you are left holding the baby, literally, probably where that term comes from. And women, we act like feminism succeeded and that's all done. That's not true. There's still, millions of women that are held as sex slaves globally. Even in Sydney, there's several thousand women that are sex slaves that have had passports taken off of them and work in brothels and have no rights. And imagine that life. Can there be a worse life than that? It's only been in the last sort of 50 years that women were allowed to open a bank account. Imagine how limiting that is on your horizons. It's only been in the last 50 years in most Western nations where rape in marriage was illegal. It didn't previously be illegal to rape your wife. Birth control, the most liberating thing that's probably been part of the feminist movement, to actually protect yourself from being saddled with children that you don't want. And the problem I have with JK is I always say it's not up to me to tell a woman how to think. So about being a woman. But I just wish JK would stop this bloody ridiculous tit-for-tat Twitter battle thing. It weakens her cause. To sit there with a cigar going, I love it when a plan comes together, and having people put you alongside Andrew Tate. It really weakens the core cause, which I fully support. I just hate this. It's like she's got into this entire mindset now of she's having a battle online with people that she has to win these little battles, and it's garbage. I mean, I think that biological women deserve ownership of their own story and their history, their self-definition of what it is to be a woman, of their politics, of their history, of their bodies. And I think trans women deserve exactly the same rights. But you don't say trans women get to define biological women to not be that. People wheel out, advanced biology and stuff like that to say that, the biological body is less and less important. That doesn't change that a woman has grown up with that body being treated a certain way because of having that body, or the impacts on her of having that body. You can say hypothetically, maybe these things don't count as much in the definition of a woman, but we have treated that person for 20 years of their life, and they've lived that life for 20 years. That is important to her. I mean, it's a crap analogy, but we don't do that to black and Hispanic people. They might both be suffering from racism in America, but they've got completely different political histories, social histories, and how they identify themselves. We don't say they're the same. We don't say that one doesn't deserve rights unless the other does, which is another offensive part of this. And this is part of the failure of modern activism, is this polarisation leads to people being lumped together that it shouldn't be. When we're lumping J.K. Rowling, who to me is a posh, champagne socialist, liberal lefty, pro-gay, pro-everything, being lumped in together with, Nazis. I see trans activists calling her a Nazi all the time, or calling her the female Andrew Tate, or lumping her together with people that genuinely hate trans people, which are, the American right, and so on. The American right and people like them are insanely anti-women. To lump somebody that is very pro-women in amongst them because they don't like trans women or have been perceived to not like trans women is kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy here. I mean, trans women and biological women being different there's nothing wrong with that. Why is that such a thing? Why do we have to continue? We don't say biological women are trans women. That would be ridiculous. But we do all the time say trans women are women, inferring the same as biological women. I'm happy for trans women to be women, but to say they're the same woman as a biological woman isn't true. And there's nothing wrong with that. Both are deserving of, love, respect, the ability to live your life free from persecution. So I support the ethos behind J.K. Rowling. I just do not support the very cheap tit-for-tat battles online, which undermine the main cause. I wish she'd move away from that. It's beneath the cause, even if it's not beneath her. So broadly, I do support J.K. Rowling's views on feminism. I don't support her tit-for-tat crap online.